Hey everyone, let's talk about the Enneagram. I've been knee-deep in it with some people talking about Enneagram, and so for the next 9 weeks we're just going to cover each type, 5 minutes every time, and so we won't be able to cover tons of it, but enough to give you a taste of it. If you're not familiar with the Enneagram, let me just boil it down to a sentence or two. The Enneagram is a typology of personalities, and it's divided into 9 types based on what we're motivated by, how we're motivated. It narrows down 9 values and shows how those values, that one value drives us. Now, we have lots of values, all of us value many different things, but there's one value that tends to drive us. And when that particular value is challenged, we feel vulnerable. And when we feel vulnerable, we begin to overcompensate. So the Enneagram takes all of that, the values, the vulnerabilities, the way we overcompensate, and shows us how we've painted ourselves into a box, painted ourselves into a corner, and how to get out of it. That's really the purpose of the Enneagram. It's a personality development system. So as you look at the Enneagram yourself, think about when you were 20 years old, in your 20s. Now, if you're in your 20s now, great. It's easy for you. But for those of us who are past our 20s, think about who you were in your 20s and what motivated you then. That'll help you land your type quicker. So if you're a type 1, you may feel like the only one who cares about what's important. Anybody? You might beat yourself up when you make mistakes. In fact, if you're type 1, you will definitely beat yourself up when you make mistakes. You have a ton of self-discipline. Man, you get the to-do list done. You always have to do what's right. Being right is doing good for you. When you walk into a room, you can see what's out of order. If a pillow has fallen off the couch, it's the first thing you're going to see. It doesn't matter if the place has just been cleaned. You will notice the one thing out of place. You love your to-do list. You obey all the traffic rules. You see the world in black and white, or right or wrong. And you're probably frustrated with other people who don't have the same standards as you. That is a quick description of type 1s. Type 1s have high standards. They're detail-oriented. They're driven by doing what's right. They're fair and ethical people. So their value, the thing that drives them, their value is goodness. They really value goodness. And so being right is equal to goodness in their mind. They value goodness. We want more people who value goodness, right? That's a beautiful trait. I love the type 1s. Now, when a type 1 feels vulnerable, they can become perfectionist. They begin to think of everything has to be right in order to be good, right? And they get resentful of people who aren't working as hard as they are. And they overcompensate by seeing the world as a place full of mistakes and errors that they are obligated to correct. That becomes heavy, right? So if a type 1 is living in an unhealthy state, they're probably going to be critical and judgmental, because that's a lot to live under, this idea that you have to fix all the mistakes in the world. I like to call the type 1 the reformer. Some people call him the perfectionist. But here's the thing about type 1s. They can make anything better. In fact, they make everything better. So if they're on your team, man, let them make the systems that you're using better. They can make them more efficient. If they're in your family, they can make game night better. If they are your neighbor, they can probably help you with your yard. Or someone who's a type 1 can rearrange your furniture into better flow. They can just make everything better. Now, if you're raising a child who you think fits this, who is type 1, I have a couple suggestions for you. First, remind them that they are loved for who they are, not for how good they are. That's going to be really, really important. They're loved for who they are, not how good they are. And then the other thing to remind them of is no one is perfect. Everyone makes mistakes. So if you're raising a type 1 child, those are going to be really important things. You're going to almost put that on repeat and remind them of that on a regular basis. If you're a type 1 yourself, you have one of the harshest critics on the face of the earth. All of us have critics, but you have the inner critic that is oh so harsh. And so I would really encourage you to start retraining your inner critic, whatever that looks like. For some people, it means acknowledging, give them a name. Yes, Sam, I recognize that you're here today. And I know that you're just trying to improve things. But I have a different plan. I have a new direction. I'm gonna go for a better place of self-awareness. Maybe that's what you need to do, acknowledge the inner critic. Another really great idea is to journal the things that the inner critic tells you. Literally write them down and then read them out loud. Because a lot of times we're unaware of how harsh that inner critic is. And once we record it and read it out loud, we can begin to shift it. So there's a couple of ideas for your inner critic. For type 1s, we love you because you do make everything better. We love that about you, and we need you to do that for us. And we want you to operate from a place of health. Healthy type 1s are committed to a life of service and integrity. You will notice that about your type 1 friends. And they also are principled, but they're patient because they've gotten to this healthy place. They're principled but patient with the process. I'm Michele Gooch with Life by Design. I know you want to live a life of direction and purpose, and I understand that sometimes we just don't know who we are anymore, and that gets in the way. We start to feel like we're not enough. And I understand how you can get paralyzed by that feeling of not being enough. And I have created a proven framework that I use in my coaching sessions to move you from this place of being stuck in not enough to becoming who you want to be. You can find more about me at lifebydesign.guru, or you can help get started with me. Just find me at www.lifebydesign.guru, Guru. I'll see you next Wednesday at 1. We'll talk about type 2s.